I sent them money for years. Now they're using it to take my sister on a free vacation and making me pay my own way. They called it fair, said I should be proud, said I was doing better anyway. But when I finally said no, I was called ungrateful. I didn't go to Italy. I went somewhere I could finally breathe. Now my mom says they made a mistake. Too late? Or too little? ATA for refusing to join a family trip because it felt like my sacrifices were invisible? What do you do when the money you quietly sent your parents over the years becomes the reason you're now expected to pay for everyone else's vacation, including your sister's, while they thank you with guilt, not gratitude? I've been turning this over in my head for weeks now. It's been eating at me quietly, like a low hum in the background of everything I do. I didn't think I'd ever write about it, much less share it with anyone outside the people involved, but here I am. Maybe I just need to say it out loud. Or write it, at least. Maybe someone out there will understand. I'm Emily. I'm 28. I work in tech. And I live a relatively quiet, stable life in a small town in Oregon. I live here with my partner, Ryan, who I met during my last year of college. We were both interning in the city, he in environmental research, me in early tech support, and bonded instantly over our shared dread of student loans and overpriced sandwiches. After graduation, neither of us could afford to live alone in our respective cities, so we made the practical decision to move in together, not because of some grand romantic gesture, but because it was the only way we could afford rent without drowning in debt. That practicality laid the foundation for what we've built since, a life centered around intention, frugality, and quiet support. I've always been the type to plan ahead, to choose the practical path over the flashy one. When I got my first job out of college, I didn't move to a trendy city or rent a studio downtown. I found a modest apartment and started building my savings. Even now, with a decent salary, I'm still incredibly frugal. It's not just a habit, it's a lifestyle that seeped into every corner of my day. Ryan and I live like students half the time. We buy generic brands, track every expense in a shared spreadsheet, and wait for clearance sales like they're holidays. I've mapped out the weekly discount schedule at our local grocery store. Tuesdays after 7th is when meat and dairy go on markdown. I plan entire weeknight meals around that window. If a can of beans is 3 cents cheaper across town, I'll make the drive. I mend socks, reuse glass jars, and haven't paid full price for clothes in at least 5 years. I once spent an entire Saturday reupholstering a used chair I got for $10, because buying a new one even on sale felt like indulgence. Even our furniture is secondhand, refinished with love, but bought dirt cheap off Facebook Marketplace. I cut Ryan's hair. We keep our thermostat low in winter and wear sweaters indoors. When we crave dessert, I make cookies from scratch with ingredients I've already budgeted for. And when we go out, it's almost always a free entry day at the museum or a picnic with markdown deli items. We've turned saving money into something of an art, and honestly a shared joy. It's not glamorous, but it's ours. Every small saving ties into a bigger dream: a home, a family, a future that doesn't live paycheck to paycheck. We chose this town because it's affordable, even though it's far from most of our friends. Our apartment is small, but it's warm, lived in, and entirely ours. Everything about our life has been shaped by discipline, compromise, and careful planning. That's our foundation, not flashy but honest, intentional. Even our date nights are carefully planned. We'll have a picnic at the local park with discounted deli items from the clearance bin, or go to a museum on the one free entry day a month. Ryan and I have this unspoken language of restraint. We get excited over saving money the way some couples get excited over fancy dinners. And I don't say this to brag. I say it because this is how deep the mindset runs. We've turned frugality into an art form, not because we have to, but because we're working towards something bigger, something long-term: a house, a family, a future that doesn't teeter on credit card balances or late rent. My sister Jessica is 30. She lives in downtown Seattle, in a high-rise apartment that costs more per month than our rent and groceries combined. Her apartment is sleek, full of floor-to-ceiling windows and curated decor, the kind of place you'd see in a design magazine, and she loves it. Not just the location, but the image. Jessica has always cared about aesthetics, about being surrounded by beauty. Growing up, she was the one who redecorated her room every few months, who saved up not for emergencies but for accessories. She works in nonprofit arts management, which I genuinely admire. It's underpaid, often thankless work, and she cares deeply about it. But Jessica's the type of person who lives for the moment. She doesn't budget. She doesn't say she'll drop her last $100 on concert tickets or a night out because she deserves it. Her closet is full of designer pieces, handbags, jackets, shoes, many of them bought on credit. She regularly posts unboxings of luxury skincare and boutique clothing on Instagram, while complaining about her lack of savings and overdue bills. She orders takeout more nights than not, and flies out of town for spontaneous weekend trips with friends. There's no safety net, no backup plan, No spreadsheet quietly tracking her monthly spending. It's all impulse and indulgence, wrapped in self-care language. And the frustrating part, no one seems to question it. Our parents treat her lifestyle like a personality trait, something whimsical and untouchable, while mine is treated like a given. Jessica gets to be the free spirit, the dreamer, the one who needs support because she's just wired differently. I'm expected to be the one who sacrifices, who understands, who keeps it together so others don't have to. That's the part that hurts the most. It's not just that she spends, it's that her spending is not only excused but at times celebrated. She's applauded for following her heart, while I'm silently relied on to do the boring, responsible thing. Her freedom is admired, my discipline is invisible. Her life looks exciting from the outside. Sometimes I do envy it. The freedom, the spontaneity, the way she seems to float above the practicalities that weigh me down daily. But that kind of life has never felt safe to me. I've always found comfort in structure, in plans, in watching my savings account slowly grow. I don't resent her joy. I just wish mine didn't come with so much quiet sacrifice that no one seems to see. We didn't grow up in a wealthy family. My parents, David and Susan, have always worked incredibly hard just to keep us afloat. My dad worked long hours in logistics, often coming home after dark with grease still under his fingernails. My mom took on whatever part-time jobs she could find, tutoring, cleaning houses, working at the library, all while making sure we never felt the strain of what we didn't have. We didn't go on vacations, and when we did, it meant driving 6 hours to stay with cousins or camping with borrowed gear. Birthdays were modest, Christmases were lean, but the house was full of warmth, of effort, of presence. They always made sure we had what we needed. Jessica and I were raised with the same love, the same values, or so I believed. We were taught to work hard, to be considerate, to help out when we could. I remember doing extra chores as a teenager when money was tight, and my mom thanking me with tears in her eyes. We weren't told directly that responsibility mattered. We lived it. It was baked into everything. Lately, though, I've started to wonder. Maybe that imbalance didn't just appear out of nowhere. Maybe it was always there in subtle glances, in comments that passed like nothing, in who got checked on more or consoled first. Not just in how we live, but in how we're seen and how we're treated. And in some ways, things did get better. They're not rich now, but they're more comfortable enough to talk about vacations and home upgrades, about small luxuries they used to shrug off as impossible. And for a long time, I never questioned their love. Not for me, not for Jessica. We were different. Sure, I was the quiet one, the rule follower. Jessica was louder, braver, always chasing something more vibrant. I thought those roles simply balanced each other out, like two ends of a seesaw. I never imagined those differences would evolve into a hierarchy, where one of us was treated as fragile and deserving of protection, while the other was expected to be unshakable and self-sufficient. So when I started earning decent money a few years back, I didn't hesitate. One of the first things I did was send money home. I bought my parents a new refrigerator when the old one gave out. I helped them replace their ancient TV, paid for car repairs when my dad's engine died. One freezing morning. Not because they asked, they never would, but because I could, because I wanted to, because I thought, this is what we do for each other. This is what you do when the people who raised you gave everything they had. They explained it like it was no big deal, that I had always been generous, that this would just be one more way of keeping the family together. So if we all wanted to go together, that was the only solution. Then came the catch. They told me that if we wanted the trip to happen, I would need to cover Jessica's entire portion, not just mine. They said their budget was limited, and that Jessica simply couldn't afford to go otherwise. And then they added something that made my blood run cold, that the money they were planning to use for their portion of the trip had come in large part from the savings I had sent them over the past few years. It all started when they brought up the idea of a family vacation abroad. They wanted the four of us to spend 10 days together in Italy this summer. When they first mentioned it, I was thrilled. We haven't done anything like that in over a decade, not since we were teenagers sharing bags of airport snacks and fighting over window seats. I was genuinely excited about the chance to reconnect, to create new memories. But as we talked more about it, I started to feel the familiar unease creeping in. What stung more than anything was the way they framed it. You're doing great, Emily. You've made good choices. Jessica just needs a little more help right now. And honestly, it's your money that made this trip possible for us in the first place. It felt like a slap disguised as a compliment, and then followed by a guilt trip. My years of quiet discipline, of budgeting and sending money home, were being repurposed without my input, and somehow I was also being asked to give even more. I wasn't being included. I was being used. I don't live in a cheaper area by accident. I gave up proximity to friends, the energy of the city, opportunities for advancement. I swapped out brunches for bulk oats and studio apartments for fixer-upper rentals, Also, I could build something stable. And now that I've done it, I'm being asked to carry more. Not because I have more, but because I planned better. I tried to explain this to them, gently. I told them I wasn't asking for a free trip. I told them I just needed to say it out loud, that it hurt, that it felt like being told, "You've done well, so now you get less." Jessica, for all her spontaneity and joy, doesn't save. She spends, she has fun, and that's fine, until I'm expected to silently fund my own way, while she contributes nothing, and still gets to come along like an honored guest. What made it worse was the emotional shift when I voiced that discomfort. My mom's tone went cold, like I'd just insulted the family's integrity. My dad sighed and said I was being ungrateful. Jessica, who had been quiet until then, rolled her eyes and muttered, "Of course you'd make it about money." Later she told me flat out, "It's not my fault you have more. Don't punish me for your choices." She said it with this dismissive confidence, like my years of effort were just a boring inconvenience, and her reliance on our parents was something noble, like I was uptight and bitter for not just falling in line. There was no acknowledgement, no empathy, no sense that maybe, just maybe, I had a point. The conversation escalated. I said maybe we could find a cheaper trip that didn't force this imbalance. Jessica scoffed and said I was ruining everything. My mom started crying. My dad went quiet. It turned into this emotionally messy loop where I was made out to be the one causing drama, just for asking that we split things fairly or reconsider the plan. I left the conversation feeling like the villain in a story I hadn't written. Jessica stood up, arms crossed, her voice sharper than I'd heard in years. "You know what, Emily? You always act like you're above everyone just because you're good with money. Not everything is a competition." I blinked, stunned by the venom in her tone. My stomach twisted with a mix of disbelief and hurt. This isn't about being better, Jess. This is about fairness. It's about being asked to spend thousands of dollars while you pay nothing, and everyone acts like that's okay. Like my sacrifices mean nothing. Mom stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Girls, please. This isn't what we wanted. We just wanted to do something special as a family. Why are you making this so hard?" "Oh, come on," she shot back, her voice rising. "You act like I'm living some luxurious life. Do you know how hard it is for me to get by in this economy? Not all of us are lucky enough to have tech salaries and frugal boyfriends." I could feel my heart pounding. "Lucky?" I repeated, my voice cracking. "You think this is luck? Ryan and I live like college kids because we're trying to build a future. We make choices, hard ones. We go without so we don't drown later. And now I'm being told I should feel guilty for having planned ahead?" "I don't," I said, staring at him. "But you are. Maybe not intentionally, but you are." Her words hit me like a slap. "I'm not making it hard," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, though my hands were shaking. "I'm just finally saying something. For one." Dad's voice cut through the tension. "You don't have to make us feel like we're choosing sides." That stung. It landed deeper than I expected. Somewhere inside, I think I'd held on to this tiny hope that maybe she'd pause, hear me say something like, "I get why you feel that way." But she didn't. She looked at me like I was the problem, like I was being dramatic. Jessica threw her hands up. "You know what? If you don't want to go, then don't. No one's forcing you. But don't ruin it for everyone else." My throat tightened. I felt the burn of tears behind my eyes, but I swallowed them. "Not here. Not in front of them." "You know what hurts the most?" I said, my voice quiet but sharp. "It's not that you're getting a free trip. It's that no one, not one of you, thought for a second how this would feel to me. You all just assumed I'd say yes, like always, because I'm the easy one, the one who doesn't need help. But I do. I need something. I need to feel like my choices mean something to this family." I didn't go on the family trip. The thing is, with that exact same amount of money, I could have easily taken a vacation with Ryan. And that thought hit especially hard because Ryan and I have been so careful with our finances ever since we moved in together. We've always prioritized saving for a home, for emergencies, for a future that felt secure. We never splurge. We don't do big purchases. Vacations, especially the kind where we fly somewhere or stay in a nice place, have always been this unspoken dream between us, something we'd whisper about late at night after paying bills or looking at our budget spreadsheets. Someday, we'd say. Someday, when things felt more comfortable, more doable. We'd been casually talking about going somewhere together for months, somewhere peaceful, like the coast, or maybe even New Mexico, something quiet and intimate, but we always stopped ourselves. Not now. We need to be smart. We need to wait. So the idea that I'd have to use my hard-earned savings, money that had always been set aside with such discipline, to join a trip where I felt unfairly treated, rather than finally doing something meaningful and overdue with the person who's been by my side through every frugal decision, started to weigh heavily on me. The more I thought about it, the more it gnawed at me. Not just because of the injustice, but because of the reminder. I'd never really let myself enjoy anything. Not fully, not without calculating the cost. And suddenly I felt this deep, almost primal craving, not just for a break but for a sense of release. I realized I'd never had a vacation that felt earned. I'd never let myself go, let myself breathe deeply, sleep in late, eat what I craved without mentally logging every expense in a spreadsheet. So Ryan and I did it. We stopped waiting. We booked a week on the Pacific coast, and for the first time in our relationship, we didn't stress over the cost of every detail. It felt indulgent and surreal, almost like stepping into someone else's life. We stayed in a small ocean view cottage, tucked between cliffs and wildflowers, with creaky wood floors and mismatched curtains that somehow felt like home. Each morning we woke up with the windows cracked open, sea air drifting in, and no alarm set. We walked barefoot on the sand, hand in hand, saying almost nothing because nothing needed to be said. The silence wasn't from stress or strain, it was peaceful. We ate fresh seafood caught the same day, sipped overpriced wine under string lights, and bought a painting from a roadside artist just because it made us smile. We lingered in bookstores, napped in hammocks, danced in the living room to old playlists we made when we first moved in together. We lived fully, not according to a plan or a budget or a spreadsheet. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was on the outside looking in at other people enjoying life. I was in it. Ryan surprised me with a sketchbook he'd tucked into his bag, the same kind I used to fill back in college before I got too busy to draw. That night, while the wind howled outside and the fire crackled beside us, I sat and sketched for hours. Seagulls, crashing waves. It was like I was meeting a part of myself I had buried beneath practicality. And I cried, not because I was sad, but because I was finally letting myself feel everything I had denied for so long. Joy, peace, spontaneity. I wasn't surviving anymore. I was living. And it was everything I didn't know I needed. For the first time in a very long time, I wasn't budgeting my joy. I wasn't rationing my rest. I wasn't apologizing for wanting something beautiful. I was simply existing in a space where my sacrifices had finally bought me something soft and slow and beautiful. While Ryan and I were enjoying the salty breeze and slow mornings of the coast, my family was on their trip in Italy. I tried not to think about it, about what I was missing, or how they were spending their days, but part of me couldn't help but picture it. I imagined the meals, the sightseeing, the laughter echoing in hotel hallways. I imagined them smiling without me, and a part of me ached at the thought. But when I finally spoke to my mom a few days after they got home, her voice cracked as soon as she heard mine. She told me the trip had been more difficult than expected. The hotel they stayed in was much farther from the city center than they realized. The room was cramped, noisy from traffic, and the plumbing was inconsistent. Hot water one minute, ice cold the next. The air conditioning barely worked, and they ended up sleeping with windows open, listening to scooters and street vendors until dawn. They'd skipped the museum Jessica had been excited about. It was too expensive. They got lost looking for a market. They argued over directions. And at dinner one night, my mom said, Jessica had burst into tears after a minor disagreement. I kept turning around and thinking you'd be there. My mom said over the phone, her voice wet with tears. You're always the one holding everyone together. And without you, it just felt off. I think we made a mistake. My throat tightened. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to say, I told you. But I didn't. I just listened, letting her emotions soak into the silence between us. My dad didn't say much when he got on the phone, just a quiet, it was fine, but his tone was subdued. That kind of tone that says more than a full paragraph ever could, like he knew something had shifted. Jessica sent me some photos a day later. Group shots with half smiles, a blurry shot of her in front of a fountain, a plate of pasta, the kind of picture you post when you're trying to convince yourself you're having a good time. I opened them, glanced, and then closed the messages. I couldn't look at them too long, not because I was angry, but because I didn't want to feel what they might stir up. And that's when the guilt hit. Not the kind I could brush off, a deep, twisting guilt. I felt bad for not being there, for not giving them what they wanted, but I also felt guilty for feeling bad because I had needed that space, that boundary so badly. There was no winning feeling, just a weight, that familiar quiet ache of being the one who always holds it together and finally letting go. I kept asking myself, was it really about the money, or was it about what the money represented? Because I would have gladly paid for myself if I hadn't been told, so plainly, that I had to, because I'd done better. The worst part is, I don't want Jessica to suffer. I don't want her to miss out. I really genuinely want her to have good things in her life. I know her path hasn't been easy, and I know some of the things she struggles with are real. This isn't about wanting her to lose something. It's about wishing I didn't always have to give up something in return. I just want us to be seen equally, or at least acknowledged for the different paths we took. I want my parents to recognize that while Jessica needs help, I need recognition. Maybe not in dollars, maybe just in fairness. Maybe in a quiet moment where someone says, "We see how hard you've worked, and we appreciate you." I keep playing it all over in my head, rewinding the moment they told me about the trip, replaying the silence after I voiced my feelings. I wonder if it would have gone differently if I'd said less, or if I'd said more, if I'd smiled and paid my way like always. Would I still be feeling this way, or worse? And I think about the roles we've each been boxed into for so long. If the roles were reversed, if I were struggling and Jessica were thriving, would they have told her to pay and covered me instead? Or would they have assumed, as they always have, that I'd figure it out, that I'd be... Sometimes I think I was trained to need less, praised for being low maintenance, the good one, the helper, the easy daughter. I wore that badge with pride for years, until I realized that it didn't come with the same love, just expectation. And the truth is, I didn't want them to solve anything. I just wanted to be thought of, considered, offered the same softness that Jessica gets, even if I don't ask for it. Because just because I didn't need it, doesn't mean I didn't want it, or that it wouldn't have meant something huge to be offered it freely, without asking. I go back and forth in my head every day. Was I selfish? Was I too blunt? Was I being dramatic? Was I right? I don't know. That's the part that hurts the most. Not knowing if I stood up for myself, or just pushed them further away. So, Itia, for not going, for protecting my peace, for letting years of quiet resentment bubble to the surface over one vacation, for asking to be seen in a family that's always expected me to be strong. I don't know. I really don't. But it still hurts. And I think for the first time in a long time, I'm letting that hurt matter.